What's up, Wolfpack? Cole Gregg here, and in front of us we have the Canyon Strive CFR. We're going to be diving into some of the details, giving you our kind of long-term ride impressions, as well as some of the unique characteristics this bike brings to the table.
Oh, perfect.
To get started, this is a 170 mil front, 150 mil rear trail bike that tries to push into the enduro category when things get steeper. For 2022, this top-of-the-line spec from Canyon offers a Fox Factory 36 with that 29-inch option. Out back, you have a Fox DPX2 factory shock as well. You have a SRAM X01 Eagle 12-speed rear derailleur, as well as an X01 shifter. There's a set front and rear of SRAM Code RSC 4-piston brakes, backed with 180 millimeter rotors in the rear and a 200 millimeter rotor in the front. Keeping all that power on the ground, you have a set of DT Swiss EXC 1200 wheels wrapped in Maxxis rubber front and rear with the Ascii up front and the DHR2 out back. Well, now that we have all the basic specs out of the way, let's dive into some more of the technology that makes this Strive unique.
So over the course of the last few years, we've spent a lot of time on different Canyon bikes, as well as other bikes in this aggressive trail or enduro 29er space. One bike that I guess some might consider long in tooth or maybe due for an update is the Canyon Strive. This thing has not really changed all that much, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? If you've got something that works, there's no need to change it, and for the time being, it seems like this bike just works. We passed it around to a few of our testers over the last several months. They're setting PRs uphill and downhill on this bike without feeling the need to chase all those super long, low, and slack numbers that everyone thinks they need. It is available in 3 build specs from $42.99 up to $69.99. One of the neatest things about this bike is the ShapeShifter technology, which originally came out in 2011 and saw a revision with Gen 2 ShapeShifter in 2018. This bike will essentially have a high climb position and a low downhill position, or click and clack as it is marked on their little toggle switch on the bars. Head tube angle is 65.2 or 66.7. Seat tube angle is 72.9 or 74.4. All sizes have 435 chainstays, 1,234 mil wheelbase, and a 645 stack height with a 464 millimeter reach on our size large. We wanted to share some of the questions that we asked of the engineer and designer behind ShapeShifter technology, who is Vincenz Thoma, who works for Canyon Bikes in Germany. Vincenz lives in the Alps, and if you've ever ridden in the Alps, you know that to get to any of the good downhills, you have to do very long, sustained, grueling climbs. He experimented with just having a different link, and he would swap those out on his rides. It would take about 10 or 15 minutes, and that would change the orientation of that shock, raise the bottom bracket height, steepen the seat tube angle and head tube angle, and put them in just a more efficient climbing position and alter the suspension's spring rate and curve. After doing that testing for quite a while, he discovered that his climbing was more efficient, faster, and generally more enjoyable, and that was kind of proof of concept. And as he sought to make this a more user-friendly, faster, and efficient way to modify the bike, he started exploring hydraulic systems and other ways of modifying that shock orientation where riders didn't have to get off and make mechanical changes to the linkages. Part of that development was working with Fox. They knew that Fox has great, reliable suspension, and if they could have a system that was built, maintained, serviceable by Fox, it would be better off for the end user as well as for a good partnership in their development of technology. 2018, after 3 years of development, the gas spring system was finalized with Fox and Canyon and came out on the new 2018 Strive. Since then, the bike has been really a popular bike in the lineup for Canyon, as well as aggressive trail and enduro riders that are looking for something that they can still climb and descend on. Another cool factor about the ShapeShifter technology is that you can run any shock. The eye-to-eye is all that matters on this bike. You don't have to have any special damper or custom shock. So that was something that was really important to the development of this system, we were told, and Canyon wanted to make it as easy and friendly for customers as they could without having to buy or find expensive shocks if they wanted to replace it or make any modifications. So that Fox gas spring ShapeShifter actuator is its own individual unit, and it is tucked away up in here, and it can be serviced by Fox and has a pretty long service life. So it's a really neat system and something that actually works out on the trail, as you'll see Cole talk about later.
Well, I've been lucky enough to spend the last 3 months extensively riding this bike, both in very dry conditions down here in Bend and back up on my home trails near Seattle. One of the things that I really enjoy about this bike when you're really at speed is changing direction and the nimbleness of it. That short chainstay, steeper head tube angle really comes into play when you want to change directions through tight switchbacks or chicane type corners. Some of the downsides I have found with this bike in the little bit steeper head tube and shorter wheelbase is on bigger jumps, it feels a little bit out of place on kind of, you know, less dirt jumpy style jumps like we were riding today, where you're more at speed versus going slow. The bike is very in control, but as soon as the jumps start to get a little bit bigger, when I whip, I feel like, oh, maybe I'm not gonna have enough leverage to bring it back. Doesn't stop me from hitting big jumps though. It's still just as fun, just something to be aware of if you are new to jumping. On the fact that I spent the last 3 months on this bike, I was lucky enough to beat some own PRs, both uphill and downhill on trails that I have been riding for the last decade. So I think that speaks to what this bike is actually capable of, say in the Pacific Northwest on some of those more rowdy trails. One of which was, you know, a 2.5 minute descent filled with off-camber routes, sharp switchbacks, and a few punchy climbs, which is where that ShapeShifter came in really handy.
Oh yeah. Woo. A little T-bog for good measure. All right.
By engaging the ShapeShifter, not only are you increasing your head tube angle, you're also increasing your seat tube angle, getting more weight over the handlebars, making some of those punchy climbs a lot easier to navigate. With ShapeShifter engaged, you also have a bit firmer suspension platform, which mitigates pedal bob, in which there already isn't a ton on this bike. It's totally manageable to do climbs without ShapeShifter, but I do think you are missing out on what this bike was designed for by engaging that ShapeShifter. As I got more familiar with this bike and understood with that shorter wheelbase where the traction was, as well as the steeper head tube, I haven't ridden a bike above a 65-degree head tube angle in quite some time. So once I figured that out, I could really start trusting the traction points, getting the bike over, and really committing to corners. And it did show, obviously Strava, you can't take it for absolute truth, but I was consistently faster on this bike than I have been on any other bike in the last 3 years. So for the build, I was really pleased with their selection in the CFR spec with the Fox factory fork and the DPX2 factory shock. I left the stock amount of volume spacers in. Shock I'm running at 212 PSI and I'm 175 pounds geared up. On the fork, I'm running actually 95 PSI. I've been running this bike a little bit stiffer than I have in the past. For whatever reason, this platform really liked a stiffer suspension feel, and that rear end didn't feel like it was packing or didn't feel like I needed any more reducers to get that ramp up that I needed and really enjoy. Some of the only complaints with the build kit I have is the dropper post, and if you've seen any of my videos, you've heard me say it before, but with this one, that 180 mil spec is actually really good for this size of bike. I just have daddy long legs and need that 210 from One Up, but as a rider, if you're that 5'10", 5'11", which this bike would fit you perfectly, that 180 mil dropper is spot on. As a trail rider's bike, this is a really, really unique offering. With the addition of that ShapeShifter, I have no problem at all waking up in the morning knowing I'm going on a big pedal. There's no dread when it comes to that. And the bike's really a joy to ride. The weight is spot on. The build kit is amazing. Again, if I bought this for myself, the only things I would change are those grips and everything else would stay stock. Well, thanks for tuning in, Wolfpack. We really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. Go ahead and drop us a comment below if you have any questions about this bike. Maybe if you have a certain trail network that is this bike gonna fit you? Or, this is the type of rider I am. We'd be happy to help you decide on your next bike. Until then, we'll see you out on the trails.